thought that way too. And it was a two-way street in many ways. Now, Europe didn't have goods that China really wanted because they produced everything they needed themselves, more or less. And in fact, they produced surpluses, and they sold it not just to Europe, but they sold it around the Indian Ocean basin and so on. They were very sophisticated sailors. They had a huge navy. So in the very early 1400s, their sailor Zheng He, who was he was a member of the royal court of some office. He was a mathematician and a navigator. He was Islamic, Muslim, and anyway, he went on a series of expeditions, and so that was his expeditions were, I think, at 1410 or 1407 or something like that, to 1425 or 26. That's as I understand it. So in the period we're in right now, it's like the 600th anniversary of that. And in China, a couple of years ago, probably about 4 years ago now, I read a number of articles on him. In the Chinese version of his feats and his accomplishments, they sailed around the world and he mapped it. If you go to Wikipedia or a number of English language websites, you'll see repeatedly that he had 7 major voyages around the Indian Ocean, that he might have even made it as far as the Horn of Africa. And the Chinese version of history is that he sailed around the world and he mapped it, and he brought back to the court of the Ming Dynasty as emperor, and the emperor said, "Oh, Zheng He, you're such an amazing sailor, you're just this outstanding guy, and you've honored China by what you've done, and you've added to our body of information, and you've discovered the world, and now we know exactly what's out there, because we sort of knew before, but we didn't really know. Now we know," and he said, "Burn your fleet, we're not going there. And it's great you know it, but we're going to concentrate at home." And the story is actually a lot more complex than that, but I'm told anyway. It's a lot to do with money, and there's a lot to do with political stability and things like that. But basically, the fleet was destroyed, the navy was destroyed, and just these ships he had, they were like over 400 feet in length. They were 5 times the size of Columbus's ships. They were huge, and he went with these floating cities, maybe 100 ships in his flotilla. And I'm not sure if that many ships went around the world on that expedition, but they were big, and they were very advanced, and the navigation was advanced. So anyway, according to the history that I received and learned in China a few years ago, again on the 600th anniversary of this sailing adventure, is that basically the maps that he created made their way to Europe over the Silk Road. And so when Christopher Columbus went to these various courts of the royal courts in Europe to get funding for his expedition, what he actually had, he didn't have the proverbial orange that was round explaining to Ferdinand and Isabella that the earth was round. He had a map showing that the earth was round and where the land masses were. And of course, the Basque fishermen had been coming to North America for several hundred years before that. That's my understanding. And so there was actually a lot of knowledge among our more ancient people that there was something else out there. So anyway, around 1492 or 1480s or whatever, it set off this basically the global arms race of the day, which was to conquer the planet. And in China, in the 1500s, the Catholic Church started sending missionaries, first the Jesuits, then Franciscan and Dominican missionaries. And I'm not going to get into all that detail, but that, again, this is in the Ming Dynasty, and this is where China starts making some tough decisions in their sort of their technological track that would have probably kept pace with Europe, very much gone in tandem with technological innovations and advancements in Europe, was basically arrested. It was stopped, it was delayed. And they were fighting off basically colonial invaders for several hundred years. So let's fast forward to 1945. And I mentioned before the Japanese occupation, invasion of China in the early 1900s. In 1945, World War II ended, and of course, you know that. And I should back up. Just in 1911, the Qing dynasty was overthrown, and between 1911 and 1949, when the communists established their government, there was a lot of chaos in China, a lot of political upheaval. The nationalists, the Kuomintang with Chiang Kai-shek versus the communists. There were some other players in there earlier on, but that's what it boiled down to. Both the Communist Party of China and the Kuomintang nationalists, they both opposed Japan during World War II. And they had sort of a nominal unities a little bit from time to time. But in 1945, there's a book out. This is out, I think last year sometime. It's called China 1945. And I can pass this around, but the book is a little bit of a disappointment. It's a play-by-play on a lot of different personalities. The U.S. was very involved. So Japan at the time occupied China. They lost World War II, surrendered officially, and therefore they lost China as well. And it was often, many people assume or have the opinion that the U.S. was thinking that it would really have an in China. And Chiang Kai-shek, with the nationalists, he had been courted, he had been to Washington, I think a number of times, I'm not sure how many. But he was our guy in China. And it was, the plan was, from the U.S. government point of view, that through Chiang, the Japanese are gone, we wouldn't necessarily own and run China, but our guy would be there. And this is the sort of post-colonial model that we have all over the world. That same thing would happen in China, and we would have access to it. Any number of things would be developed from that. Well, it didn't happen that way, obviously. And I'll throw this, I'll send this around. Chiang Kai-shek is sitting there. He looks like he's kind of smug, like sort of the cat that ate the canary. The U.S. ambassador and his assistants there. And Mao Zedong is sitting, this is all in Chongqing in late September 1945. They're all together, and they were called like negotiations. It didn't end well. And with nice words, but nothing came of it. Mao Zedong went off, and 3 years later, he was victorious in China. But one little aside from this, I want to point out, I want to criticize our own government for a moment. The bombing in Japan of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, if anyone is looking for like a topic for a research paper or something like that, the question is, what influence did that bombing have on the struggle for people's hearts and minds in Civil War China? And I just hear very, very little about it, even in this book, very little. But I want to point something out. So this is Shanghai right here, and Nagasaki's right there, Hiroshima's right there. And as we know, the U.S. had some intentions in Korea as well as China and the whole region. And I mean, the U.S. was just up to its eyeballs in trying to influence the outcome, probably in its favor, of course. And it's such a rich time. And so what this book is about actually is, it's called Mao's Revolution, America's Fateful Choice. And the premise of the book is we backed the wrong horse, basically. We backed the loser. And it was, any astute political observer probably could have figured that out. I guess that's true, I don't know. But anyway, it's quite fascinating how, in a sense, we lost China, just like we've lost some other places. So in the historical sense, we sort of, we basically failed to invade militarily or gain control the way we wanted. We tried a similar thing, and these are, this failure of like losing China goes a long way towards helping you understand why we were so intent on Vietnam and Korea. And of course, in Korea it was very military, and we sort of won, I guess, the U.S. In Vietnam we lost. We couldn't defeat them militarily, and which leads to sort of the next chapter and where we are now in the present state of things. And it's my view, shared by many people, that what we couldn't invade militarily, dominate militarily, we invaded with money and capital and consumers and our corporations. So I kind of just sum it up here. It's kind of an open question. So, in many ways, China, you might hear me say this again too, but China is an unwritten book. The future of China is an unwritten book. It's not it's stable, but it's not, the outcome isn't guaranteed. It's a work in progress. Depending what the West does, China's going to do something different. We don't really know what the answer will be. And I just throw in there that several weeks ago when Fred Small was here talking about climate change and global warming, it's like this whole reality, this inevitability, this issue we have that can't be repaired. It's like an absolute. It's not. We can hopefully lessen it, but we can't undo it. And so throw that into the mix of this unwritten book of the future, and it's really quite fascinating. So I'll just move on to what's China doing today. Well, China is, again, amazing technological place. They are just proficient at building buildings and building railroads. I want to just go back again to this emphasis that I put on technology. And in a very, yes, high-tech, they're moving there, high-tech, low-tech, middle-tech. The manipulation of engineered things, they are brilliant. They're just brilliant at it. And they have a workforce that there's plenty of abuse there, but there's plenty of good things to say about it as well. They're talented, hardworking people. And there's a lot of them. And I say that again, neutral terms. I'm not trying to invoke a stereotype or anything like that. There's a lot of people that want to work, are willing to work, and when they do work, their wages do buy what they need. Again, it's not all good. There's many people are underpaid. There's a lot of workplace safety issues, for sure. But they are creating their civil society. And this is where I sort of contrast it to the U.S. again, is you can almost be summarized in it's a bit simplistic, but in the U.S., we're taking our industry, our economy that does serve us, of course. It provides the needs of all of us here. But the emphasis is on empire. The emphasis is on military production, profit for corporations, and it wasn't always that way. If we contrast our own history to like post-World War II, you can see where the emphasis was on developing our civil infrastructure and our civil society in general. That's what China is doing now. Now in the U.S., we've moved away from that. Starting perhaps just prior to the Reagan years, the late Carter years, certainly Ronald Reagan, austerity, cutting social programs, elevating corporations, increasing the military budget. That's our reality now. In China, they're also, of course, developing military, for good reason, perhaps. When the U.S. is your enemy, it's probably a prudent thing to do when you have a real enemy that threatens you. But fundamentally, what they're doing is building their civil society. They're taking their tax revenue, including corporate tax revenue, and they're literally building a country. And it's phenomenal. It's just amazing. So Dean's going to show us the map of China's high-speed rail system. So China, rail technology, I talk about technology. Rail technology is actually kind of interesting. We can look at our own history, our own Western history, and look at the history of railroads. For example, say in this country, And it's very much a history of industry, and the oil industry, and the steel industry, maybe less the movement of people. But that involves that too, making us one big connected country, east and west coast, and things like that. But the same is true in China. So prior to World War II and prior to 1900, they wanted this technology, but they sort of weren't allowed it. But they got like the leftovers from Europe and go up just to the bottom. So China has sort of like 3 rail networks. They have freight and 2 passenger networks. And this is the latest passenger network. This is high-speed rail. I don't know what that exact number is, but it's over 10,000 miles of route miles. That is, the distance between any 2 cities is one unit, one set of units, like where the distance between the 2 is a route mile, the quantity of route miles. And so they created, this is the newest network, which they started building 2003 to 2004. It went online in 2010, and they keep adding to it. It's German technology. It's the best. There was competition between Japan, France, and Germany. I think those are the 3 major ones. They chose German technology, and the deal was that they would buy the technologies, buy the rights to it. They make their own trains, but it is still German technology. The high-speed rail goes between 2 and 3 miles per minute on comfortable, quiet, safe trains. They're just a joy. They're not that expensive. They're more expensive than the other network, but the regular network. But 10,000 miles they've done in the last dozen years, 14 years. I mean, it's just astonishing what they've done. And this is the easiest example that I can, communicate broadly to an audience of the magnitude of what they have accomplished. It's just mind-blowing. And, I mean, they're great trains to ride. You should go. I recommend everyone go to China just to ride on their trains. Don't deprive yourself. There's good trains in Europe too, of course, but this is a big country, and so it's okay.
Sorry.
So anyway, it 3 miles a minute. That's 180 miles an hour. They actually are a little faster than that, 190 miles an hour maybe. They're capable of going 350. And between like Beijing and Shanghai, there's a couple of choice lines where they run 350 kilometers per hour, which is like 220. Same trains. It's just astonishing what's possible if we don't invest in the new generation of nuclear missiles or something. I mean, it's not that hard. It really isn't. And that takeaway that getting back to the U.S. media, we're just this notion is cultivated over and over and over again. Oh, we can't do that. We can't change our system. This gridlock in Congress, in the Senate and the House of Representatives, we gridlock and oh, that's awful. We're hamstrung. We can't make changes, and we have this national debt. And blah blah blah. Well, no, you can do whatever you want. I mean, we're the most powerful modern country history's ever known, right? Well, we can do whatever we want. What they want to do, corporate America and the political establishment wants, is for actually nothing to change. They've got a system in place that works just fine for the empire and global domination as it is, and they're not interested in changing anything. And we see that in our supposedly two-party system. Our primary system is it's set up to make sure. They would call it stability. I would call it dysfunctional militarism. But it's set up so nothing changes. They like what they've got. By contrast, China again is developing its civil society. Now they've also developed an interstate highway system, probably about the same size or maybe a little bigger than that, which I'm not in favor of so much. They've got so much rail. you know, of course they have a lot of trucking too. But they're encouraging, you know, they're developing markets. And, you know, in China, they're developing technologically and economically, they're developing all of the above. Electric cars, SUVs, I mean, everything, which there's a lot of foreign auto companies there as well. But, yeah, they're developing a solar and wind industry. It's massive. They're involved in Chinese culture is very pragmatic and practical in many ways. And if it works, we'll use it. If it doesn't work, why bother? We don't want to do that. So, I mean, my point is that there's no easy answers for a lot of this. Officially it's like 1.4 billion people. People say it's a little bit higher than that for the population, but that's a lot of people to be caring for a government. I mean, that's a lot. And they're doing it remarkably well. Not that there's not problems, not that there's, you know, your lower classes are still lower classes, or you know, you end up there or whatever, or can't get out. You know, that still is a problem, but 1.4 billion, I mean, it's just amazing what they've done. So I did want to, you know, of course, touch on actual media. I read the Wall Street Journal a lot, kind of as a spy. I don't recommend the paper to many people. I don't have anything good to say about its owner, and we've heard and bad things to say about it, actually, but not here. Anyway, here's a story. Some of these stories they don't mention China's directly. This is a story. This is just last month. North Korea nets income from electricity. So there's some patterns that U.S. media uses repeatedly, over and over again, when they talk about China. And Korea sometimes is right in the same breath. So this story is about North Korea selling, it's big headlines, North Korea nets income from electricity. And China and Korea, I'll just say Korea, North Korea, they share a border right here. And there's a river along much of it. There's a couple of rivers, but there's the Yellow River. They have several hydroelectric installations along there. It's the border, so they're owned by both countries. And heaven forbid that North Korea would be able to sell anything to China like electricity. But my point is, I mean, I don't know, anyone want to venture a guess how many millions of dollars North Korea gained by Chinese selling electricity to China? Okay, take a guess.
Oh, I don't know, $1 million?
10.8 million. That's kind of low. That's what this article's about. I mean, it's a headline article, right? So they made the splash, you know. $10.8 million. I mean, I think the city of Boston spends like 3 times that on street lighting or something. You know, I don't know. Maybe not. You know, there's these tools of. Let me talk about the New York Times. I don't know if there's any New York Times readers here. How much time do you?
We're getting.
Okay.
Yeah.
5 minutes. The New York Times is probably like the worst. They have this pattern that they do that they'll run a news story.